Tobacco use is widespread and poses many health risks. That's no secret. The most obvious solution is tobacco-free zones. Within these zones, individuals are prevented from participating in behaviors that harm or pose risks to themselves and others around them. Ideally, the whole nation could become one huge tobacco-free zone, right? Today we are going to consider a different cultural perspective to see why tobacco-free zones may not be the best solution. It all started around 500 years ago when Columbus sailed the ocean blue to quote-unquote discover the Americas. The Americas were already inhabited at this time by many different peoples. Because European colonizers thought they had landed in the Indies, they incorrectly dubbed these people Indians, a name that has been perpetuated to the present day, with the American government recognizing people associated with having roots native to the American continent as American Indians. Today, I'm going to refer to those groups as indigenous or natives. Over time, as more foreigners moved into the Americas and began to colonize different parts, the local native tribes were affected in different ways. Pipe smoking was widespread across North America in pre-contact period. The ceremony, which involved sharing a pipe and tobacco, singing and dancing, was a way of establishing alliances and ensuring peace, at least temporarily. It became a way to integrate Europeans into trading and kinship systems. The French were concerned with trade, and the Spanish with conquest, control of native populations, and extraction of resources. Consistent with this difference, in the 18th and early 19th centuries, the French were growing tobacco along the Mississippi and Missouri rivers and trading it with American Indians, whereas the Spanish had placed restrictions on planting tobacco in New Mexico and had attempted, although with limited success, to control its use in trade. Thus, commercial tobacco was integrated more thoroughly into northern plain trade at an earlier date than it was into that of the Southwest. Over time, as tobacco growth and production became industrialized and dominated by the white man, it was common for tobacco companies to target natives. Because the white people had so often associated with indigenous people with tobacco use and viewed the native population as a vulnerable one, there was heavily targeted advertisement and marketing towards native communities by early tobacco industry. Unfortunately, natives fell victim to this targeted advertising and quickly became the population most affected by commercial tobacco products. This, coupled with the fact that most tobacco products are less expensive on tribal lands, leads us to today, where American Indians and Alaskan Natives have the highest prevalence of cigarette smoking compared to all other racial and ethnic groups in the United States. Yet also still today, some natives use tobacco for ceremonial, religious, and medicinal purposes. Unfortunately, evidence suggests that the commercial tobacco products, such as cigarette and packaged loose tobacco, are being increasingly substituted for ceremonial purposes. So, in recent years, tribal governments, community groups, and the Indian Health Service have distinguished between the sacred and secular use of tobacco, encouraged smoking prevention and cessation among tribal members. The Lakota people, situated in South Dakota, recently agreed to work with the University of South Dakota to complete a study on the use of tobacco products in traditional practices. Others of the Ogallala Band of Sioux said the following: "Only when we're praying with it, we use tobacco in many different ways. We use the tobacco in our pipes to pray, but also we use that tobacco when we want to make a connection." Lakota culture, Lakota spirituality. If you really practice Lakota spirituality, there's no substance. They never use substance of any kind. Everything you do, you have to do it with a clear mind. Tobacco is a relative. Every plant, it's a relative. Every creation is a relative. When you took that tobacco, you talked to it as a relative. How you want it to meet you, to make my view of appreciation, and you're going to help me. So they're not substances. You're working with relatives. Another elder said, "It represents, the sacredness as being part of a ceremony. It helps with the prayers, and when it's smoked, it concludes the ceremony, but it also takes all the prayers that the people have brought to that ceremony, and tobacco, when it burns, smoke goes up. God will hear those prayers." The elders say using tobacco products in traditional settings leads to building relationships and deliberate awareness. There is a protocol to follow, and it takes time to prepare. It's not inhaled, it's not addictive, it gives protection, health, wellness, and healing. Using commercial tobacco is casual, often fast or rushed. It can be addictive and leads to loss of self-control and self-esteem. So, there are definitely some clear lines between traditional use and commercial use, but where does that leave us in our policies today? Federally recognized tribes are allowed to own their own land and function as a sovereign nation. They can make their own rules. But for non-federally recognized tribes and peoples, urban Indians, and those living off of reservations, how do tobacco-free zones infringe on their traditions and right to practice religion? Something to think about.